Now that it's March, the ice off the lakes have melted here in Minnesota and are brimming with life. Spring is right around the corner and the flowers are about to bloom. The birds and the bees will start humming and chirping again, and the spirit of every living thing will come alive again. And if you're as excited as I am to capture all the flowers in bloom and new life happening on 35mm or 120 film, but you're not sure which film stock to pick, I wanted to share my shooting experience and guide on which film stocks to pick. While this is by no means a comprehensive list of films shot during the spring, it's just what I've managed to shoot over the last 5 years. I hope this guide helps you get inspired and find a couple of new film stocks to try as we are about to begin spring. So welcome to my video of finding the best 35mm and 120 film stocks for spring flowers. First, I wanted to give a very quick overview of how I'm going to organize this video. First, I'm going to show you a couple of film stock comparisons of spring flowers. Then I'm going to show you photos from each film stock, and then conclude by sharing my personal favorites. So here are some spring flower comparisons. I think it's good to see the difference between digital iPhone versus film like Portra, as well as the creative effect or false color films like LomoChrome Turquiose has. I think of all the photos I've taken, this is one of the best examples of why I shoot film versus digital, especially iPhone. Here's a comparison between some creative effect films. When shooting in the spring, another good consideration is how warm or cool the image looks based on the film stock, or even between slide film and color negative film. Granted, these are some expired film stocks. You can see how the slide film of Ektachrome makes it kind of cool blue versus the Scotch Color makes it very warm. Or even with two films where the differences are much more subtle. Ektar is known for popping the reds, and I think it shows how Portra deals with this scene is similar, but not as punchy. You especially see it in the greenery. With LomoChrome Purple, you see that certain colors are retained versus others completely shift. But on LomoChrome Turquiose, there are a lot more color shifts, like yellow to blue. Here, purple turns to pink and yellow to a teal. And the peach-orange petals turn to a lavender purple in this shot. And often I experiment in seeing how these differences are on digital versus film. All in all, there's so many beautiful colors to capture in the spring, and there's no wrong way to capture them. So let's get started on the full list of 33 film stocks that I shot for spring flowers. The purple ones are the films that I have more than 10 photos to share and will be more in depth. The other ones have less and will be mostly a first impression. I'll go through them in alphabetical order. First up is Cinestill 50D. This is the only image I captured with Cinestill 50D. It has a very kind of muted tone to it. Next film is Cinestill 400D. This is also the only photo I've taken for Cinestill 400D. I like how the red and yellow looks even with the light leak matching it. This is definitely one I plan to shoot more of this year. Next is an expired and discontinued slide film, Fujichrome Astia 100. This was one of my favorite film stocks and my favorite film simulation on Fujifilm digital cameras. Unfortunately, this is the only image I captured, but I like the soft greens and blues in the scene. The purple seemed a little bit more muted. Next up is Fujichrome Provia 100. To be honest, this is a film I don't shoot very often. I prefer Velvia most of the time for landscapes on slide film, but I'm very glad I captured a good amount of images of flowers on Provia. I think it most accurately represents the true colors of the various flower types. Overall, I think this is where this film shines, showcasing accurate colors of the natural beauty of flowers. Fujichrome RMS slide film is a discontinued film that was a little strange. It was a 100 ISO film that could be pushed up to 1000. I really enjoyed shooting some flowers with this film. It has a very soft color palette, although I'm not sure how close this looks normally considering it was discontinued. Overall, I liked how it rendered the yellows, purples, and oranges, while the greens were a little bit understated. Next up is Fujichrome Velvia 50, a staple known for its saturation. When I was going through my images, I was shocked I hadn't gotten that many flowers on Velvia. I do like what I got, but I will need to shoot more of it this year to have a better understanding of how it does with flowers. Next up is the now discontinued Fujichrome Velvia 100. I really liked how it softly rendered the greens and purples. I didn't get that many shots with this film and likely won't since it's no longer available. Fujicolor C200 is another recently discontinued Fujifilm stock. It was one of my personal favorites to shoot. I love how it handles reds, yellows, and greens especially. You get the full feeling of spring coming alive in these shots. If this film was around, I would definitely shoot more of it. Fujicolor Natura 1600 is a discontinued low-light color negative film with beautiful colors. It's the most expensive film that I've ever bought. The colors on this film are beautiful. I love the pinks and greens. The way it handled light was lovely also. The colors felt rich but soft and not overly saturated. While there was some grain, it wasn't distracting or unpleasant. Overall, this film is very good. I wish it was still available because of its versatility and colors. Fujicolor NPS 160 is another discontinued film. Some of my favorite spring photos were taken on this film. To me, the colors are very similar to Natura, but a much cleaner grain. I love this photo of the pink flower. To me, the film strikes the perfect balance of good color vibrance and saturation, while still feeling smooth and soft in color gradation. While many of the film stocks shown today is really good, I think this one is great. Overall, I found that the colors from this film stock to be the best for spring flowers. They felt both vibrant, but also soft and not overly saturated. Next up is Fujicolor Pro 400H, another film unfortunately killed by Fuji. Fuji Pro 400H is one of my most shot and favorite film stocks. How it renders reds and greens together are fantastic. This film is ideal for shooting in tropical environments, rainforests, or anywhere with a lot of flowers and vegetation. I have taken it to Costa Rica, India, and Hawaii, and they were some of my favorite environments for this film. Overall, I would continue shooting this film often to this day if it was still available. Fujicolor Pro 800Z is another discontinued film in the Fuji Pro line. I only managed to capture these two images of this film, but I liked what I got. Here's another discontinued film I shot called Fuji Superia Reala. I really loved the pumpkin orange color I got from this film from these two shots. Next up is Fuji Superia Extra 400, a film I've shot many rolls of, but now is not available. Unfortunately, I only got 2 shots of flowers on this film. However, I think the other Fuji films rendered the colors better. Next up is Fuji Superia Extra 800. I managed to find a few rolls of this film. I very much liked how these colors turned out. It felt much warmer than what I typically see from Fujifilm, but I enjoyed how it handled a wide variety of colors. Overall, I think it is a good film for shooting spring flowers. Next up is Fujifilm 200. This is a new quote-unquote product, likely a repackaged one. I only managed to capture a few images on this film, but I will likely test more this year. I really like what I see at first. Now, some have claimed it's a repackaged Kodak film, but I didn't find it to be as warm as Kodak films like Gold 200 are. Next up is Kodak ColorPlus 200. I only managed to take a few images on ColorPlus, but I like the warm colors, especially the yellow flowers. Next up is Kodak Ektachrome 100. I have 2 images on Ektachrome. One thing I've noticed with this film is how it renders blues, especially making the overall image have an interesting dynamic of feeling both cool and warm at the same time. Next up is one of my most shot films, Kodak Ektar 100. Kodak Ektar is well known for really popping the reds, oranges, and yellows. I think it makes the scenes overall very warm and popping. But to be honest, this is one of the few times where I have found that Ektar's look is a bit overpowering and may not best be suited for flowers in spring. But I guess it comes down to both personal preference and which flowers you're photographing. Overall, Ektar is a great film in general, but might be too strong at times depending on the color of the flowers. Next up is Kodak Gold 200. I find that gold handles the warmer colors very well. I think it especially does yellows well. Gold is another film that I plan to shoot more of for spring. Next up is Kodak Portra 160. I've been really starting to enjoy Portra 160 more, and I think it does well for flowers. It handles the same colors I shot for Ektar, but didn't make them as punchy or saturated. Overall, I think this is a film that I will be shooting more of for the spring. Next up is Kodak Portra 400. I'm going to be upfront here, I don't shoot a lot of Portra 400. I tend to like other 400 ISO stocks, so that is why I only have 2 images to show here. Next up is Kodak Portra 800. Kodak Portra 800 was one of my absolute favorite film stocks for spring. I loved how it handled the greens and purples, and how soft and delicate it handled yellows and oranges. I think it strikes a good balance of colors, being able to handle both low light or days where there's golden hour landing on the petals. Overall, I would say that Portra 800 is one of my main go-tos for flower photography. Next up is Kodak Pro Image 100, and what I think is one of the most underrated film stocks. I loved shooting Kodak Pro Image 100 for spring. I think the soft, subtle colors worked very well for spring flowers. It can also handle very warm and saturated colors. Overall, I think it strikes a great balance between the colors and warmth of the scene, and on overcast days, I think it looks great too. Overall, I would say don't overlook this great film for spring flowers. Next up is Kodak Ultramax 400. Kodak Ultramax is my favorite consumer grade film. I just love the saturated colors. However, I only had a few examples and would need to test it more to see how it does for spring flowers. Next up is Lomography Color 100. This is the only photo I managed to capture for spring flowers on Lomo 100. Next up is Lomography Color 400. Lomo 400 turned out to handle a wide range of colors for flowers that surprised me. I love the yellows and greens and hint of red here, or how the orange butterfly wings looked with different flowers. I found that this film handled colors beautifully for flowers. Overall, I recommend trying Lomo Color 400 for shooting in spring. Next is Lomo Color 800. I only got a few shots of Lomo 800, but I absolutely loved how they turned out. I plan to try shooting more of it this year. Overall, I found that the colors did not seem as saturated as Lomo 400, but I still think they came out very lovely. Next up is LomoChrome Color 92. Lomo Color 92 was really fun to shoot and one of the most unique I shot in the spring. I found that it handled the colors in a cool and soft way. I found that reds, oranges, and purples were rich, while others seemed a little bit softer. One tip I do have for this film is to shoot it at 100 ISO versus the 400 ISO back speed. I found it had less grain and better colors at 100. Overall, if you're going for a slightly cooler look, I would go with Lomo Color 92. Next is LomoChrome Metropolis. LomoChrome Metropolis has a very desaturated look and mutes many colors. Mainly yellows and reds pull through while all others are not as vibrant. Next is LomoChrome Purple. Over the years, I've had mixed results with Lomo Purple. At times, I had this very soft purple that changes over from green, while other times it gives a very strong purple cast. I think it's a lot of fun to shoot for flowers though. Overall, I think the images from Lomo Purple give a trippy look that I get excited to experiment more with. Next up is LomoChrome Turquiose. Lomo Turquiose was my favorite creative effect film to shoot during spring flowers. It turns so many of the petals of the flowers into completely different colors of the spectrum, from yellows to teal, orange to blue, peach to lavender, and reds to purple. It was so exciting to see how they were going to turn out. I also liked how flowers looked with the sky or other elements. Also, vegetation looked trippy too. Overall, I loved Lomo Turquiose and how it made me feel like I was in Alice in Wonderland, with the flowers being painted bizarre and unnatural colors. If you want to get weird, go with turquoise. And last up is 3M Scotch Color 100, a very old, expired, discontinued film. I liked shooting this film to see how it handled the colors of the flowers, but I'm not sure how much of this is normal versus being in an expired film. Overall, I felt that this film had a very soft color palette. So now that you've seen all the film stocks, which ones are the best ones for spring flowers? Again, here's the full list of films that we went through. But as you saw, out of the 33 films, only 21 of them are still being sold today. So next I'm going to rate my top 5 favorite films of the film stocks that are no longer available today. I'm calling this the Golden Flower category. First up is Fujicolor NPS 160. I found that the colors on this film stock were absolutely exquisite. I loved the balance of color, saturation, and how soft and subtle they looked as well. Fuji Pro 400H has long been a favorite of mine. I especially love how it handles greens and reds together. And for that reason, I loved how it handled tropical environments like Hawaii and Costa Rica. I've only shot one roll of Fujicolor Natura 1600, but it's that good. I have 2 more rolls left, and I'm really excited to see how it handles all the different colors. The low light capabilities make this a perfect film stock for shooting flowers. To me, Fujicolor C200 was kind of like the cheap version of Pro 400H. It handled greens and reds together very well as a lot of the other colors for spring flowers. If it were still around, I would definitely shoot it today. Even though I had barely any shots on Superia Reala, I would definitely shoot this film a lot more to see how it handled. Now, if only Fuji would stop killing these films and bring some of them back. One can dream. So now I want to share my top 5 favorite choices of films that are being made today for spring flowers. First is Portra 800. The way this film handled all the different colors while also having good saturation and able to handle low light, I find this to be the perfect color negative film. Next I would say is Fuji Provia 100. I think this film shines for this purpose specifically. I rarely use this film, but for capturing flowers, I think it is perfect because it retains such great color accuracy. Next, I really like Lomo 400. I felt like the colors, the saturation, the warmth was great for this film. I also liked Lomo 800, but I felt it was a little less saturated, and so I would go for Portra 800 in that category. Next up, I would choose Kodak Pro Image 100. You know, I think this is a very underrated film, and I loved how soft and subtle the colors were. You know, I had to pick one of the creative effect films, and to be honest, I was very much on the fence between purple and turquoise. But I think the way the colors are inverted and have way more different options, I definitely lean towards turquoise more. So once again, here's my final list of favorites for the golden flower ones of films that are no longer available, and the pink flower ones of films that are still being made today. Of the films still being made today, I'm probably going to focus most on trying out more of the ones that are green underlined. So which film stock is your favorite for shooting spring flowers, or one that you want to try?